All right. Hi, my name is Sevi. I'm a student at CU Boulder. I'm a sophomore, and today I'm interviewing the lovely Carly on my presentation for Drag in the Media, Performance, Representation, and Resistance. So if you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Hi, yes. My name is Carly Hannon. I am currently at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, majoring in gender studies, and I'm hoping to get my PhD in sociology.
Great. Do you have any fun facts before we start?
Um, Nothing off the top of my head, but I am reading this book in one of my gender studies classes right now,
Mm.
which I think is really interesting, and I recommend it to anyone listening to this right now.
Great. Okay, well, let's dive in. My first question is, could you start by telling me a bit more about your background and basically what drew you to queer studies and how drag fits into your personal life and or your academics?
Yeah, of course. So I got into queer studies in high school because I was really interested in how identity is constructed through culture and media, and kind of more specifically how it affects policy and policymakers. That really drew my attention, and my teacher in my gender studies class, my junior year, just really had me engaged the whole time. So I knew that this was something I wanted to pursue in the future. Drag just kept showing up in everything I was reading, specifically in those classes and for my own personal entertainment.
Mhm.
And it kind of clicked to me that drag wasn't just entertainment, it's theory and action. And watching drag was seeing like gender performativity come alive, and it became this intersection of academic curiosity and personal enjoyment for me.
Strong, strong answer. I can definitely agree with that one. When did you first start engaging with drag, whether through live shows, media, or online spaces?
Yeah, I first started getting with drag. I think watching RuPaul's Race in high school.
Yeah,
When
same.
I first Yeah, when I first started taking my gender studies class my junior year. And like a lot of people my age, but I didn't really get it until I went to this small local drag show in New York. I think this was the summer of my junior year going into my senior year. And I visit my aunt who lives in Brooklyn every summer. And she was like, we should go to this event. It sounds awesome. So I ended up going and kind of seeing the performers up close, like feeling the energy in the room. It really completely changed my understanding of drag. Um, Online drag was kind of produced to be polished. Um, but live drag was like this raw emotional experience for me. And that's kind of when I became hooked with it, just to be really up close and personal with the performers and just really see the emotion on their face. I thought that was really, really cool.
Lovely, lovely. And I mean, what would you say that drag means to you personally as of now?
This is kind of a hard question, but I think it's just kind of a way to show other people that it is okay to express yourself, and expressing yourself is a way of freedom for many people, and it shouldn't be considered an escape. It should just be considered like, it's a part of your everyday life. It's who you are. It kind of it allows you to fully exaggerate yourself, to celebrate the parts of you that the world and politics now tell you to come down from.
Mm.
Um, it's kind of queerness made visible. It has so many emotions to it, and not are all just positive. They can also be negative, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just, giving the audience something to like feel.
Right.
It is also, I would say it's like a mirror to society. So it expresses of how much gender is performance, and it's the divide between sex and gender, and that kind of really, gives into it. And it does so joyfully, and with so much emotion. I think that's really awesome because it can be really hard for people nowadays to understand the difference between sex and gender.
For
So,
sure. I think it's all about like the intersection too. I feel like there's a lot of people force the overflow of sexuality and gender when really they're like very two distinct things. And like just because you're a
Mhm.
more feminine identifying man doesn't mean that you're a gay man or like vice
Exactly.
versa. They're very separate, and this is kind of just a way to express gender without feeling any of those like overseen binaries that society is.
Yeah, binaries, stereotypes, all of the above. I think
Yeah.
that's
Is going off of that, I mean, how would you say drag challenges traditional ideas of gender and sexuality?
um I think drag shows us that gender is very much a form of expression.
Mm.
Um, so that really challenges like traditional ideals that sex and gender are the same because, going back and looking into history, you see that people think that sex and gender are the same, you know?
Right.
When you're born with male anatomy, you are automatically assumed a male. When in reality, like, you know, gender is how you present yourself. That's the definition, and sex is how, you look and your internal organs on the inside. Um, so I think that drag really challenges this because, again, it's a very strong form of expression. So like when a drag queen puts on their wig or lashes, um, they reveal how much work everyone does to perform gender daily.
Right.
So it challenges the ideals that surround masculinity and femininity, and they're almost used as tools um, in a form of expression. I feel like I'm using the word expression a lot, but this is a very good example of how expression is used in the real world.
Right. I mean, the gender is nothing without expression. I mean, because if everyone is just, if you have no way of like almost performing who you are, then there's no way to like perceive it. So it really is all about expression, I would say, too. Uh,
Yeah, very much so.
how would you say drag serves as both performance and personal expression? So this is kind of intersecting what we did talk about it, but a little more on the performance side as well.
Yeah, yeah. Um, hmm. I think that there is kind of a blend between the both of them.
Right.
Um, so it's like the blend between the persona and yourself. And the performance might be heightened to an extent. Like the performance I went to when I was in New York, it was very extravagant. They had lights, music, loud, everything was big. Their what they were wearing was sparkling. It was long, flowy, so
Hmm.
much movement going on. Um, and just overall like very, catching your eye.
Yes.
Um, but also at the same time, all of that is like it comes from something real. It comes from, the pain that some of these people face because their families may not accept them for who they are, or the joy that they face for, being able to put on that sparkly dress that they've always wanted to. So I think that that's really awesome. And it's kind of like, some people, what I do is I play guitar to release stress. And in this way, it's kind of like, expressing yourself as a way of fully releasing your emotions. And so when you're on that stage, you're just pouring out everything and you're very vulnerable, which I think takes a very strong person to do. So I just really like overall, I think that's awesome. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up music because I do feel like drag is an art form that like people almost don't even consider it an art the way they consider like music, or even though
mhm.
like at the end of the day it really is the same thing where like you have a person feeling a sort of way and just wanting to share it with the world and needing to get that off their chest, and like it really is that simple, and it's just like another beautiful form of art whether people want to recognize it or not, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like when I'm feeling kind of upset, like I'll play like sadder songs, but when I'm feeling happy, I'll play happier songs. Like it kind of goes the same way in a drag performance, but it all comes back or all comes out as like very like outgoing. Um so yeah.
Yeah. Do you think drag has changed the way society understands queerness or gender fluidity?
I think Absolutely, yes. I mean, it can definitely be hard for many people, especially people of older generations, to understand drag and understand that, it's just freedom of expression, obviously. Um, but it's kind of made questions about gender fluidity more mainstream in media and culture now. And previously, like there was no language for um people who don't identify in the binary.
Right.
There wasn't anything but kind of hatred towards that. So now through drag, people are exposed to individuals who on purpose play with their own gender expression, and kind of helps normalize the idea that gender can be flexible and creative. And kind of going back on the previous question, how we were talking about like, how outgoing and loud drag can be. Like when you see this on media, it's going to grab your attention, the sparkly dresses they're wearing, their hair, like everything going on in a drag performance is going to bring your attention. And obviously, there is going to be hate regarding that. But there is also going to be probably younger kids and people like me in high school when I was just kind of thrown into like the watching drag mix, like all of that,
Mhm.
who are like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I've never really witnessed this before. And it can really help shape a person's identity because they're like, these people are so confident and outgoing, that they can truly express themselves in front of the whole world, without any shame. And that can give like a lot of young kids a lot of confidence to, come out and express themselves fully.
Great answer. I completely agree. I think it's like I feel like there's such a stigma around showing it to the younger generation because there's a lot of people that, believe that taking that in at a young age can kind of convince you one way or another. But I think, like we were saying earlier, I mean, it really is just a form of art that like it doesn't need to be hidden. Like it's no different than
Hmm.
it's really just like a dance performance or a singing performance, yet it's people
Yeah.
who want to put a little bit more of their personal identity in it. And like I just don't feel like that's anything that should be hidden no matter the generation or.
Hmm. Yeah, of
Um,
course.
Speaking of, so how do you see race, body type, or class shaping different styles of drag? So like, is it, we talked earlier about intersectionality. So like, do we see that white drag performers, are performing different than, people of color? Like, is it when you're bringing in all the different aspects of identity, how does the expression, kind of alter, I would say?
Hmm. I really do think that's a big question because, like you just said, like intersectionality, that's what the question's asking, but like it ties into every part of a human,
Hmm.
race, class, ethnicity, all the above. Um, and I think those can be a very big part of drag, even when people try to kind of push it away and not really think about it, just think about like the person that's performing. But I did some research on this previously, but I was just remembered kind of how we were learning about how um, like Black cultures are huge, for wait, I don't even know how to say this, but like um, those are kind of the stems of queer and drag communities.
Right.
It didn't just stem from, white communities. And I think people automatically think everything comes from white people,
Right. It's
which
all
is
from
in
Columbus.
yeah, which is in some cases can be true, unfortunately. But in this case, like drag does stem from Black communities, which is really cool.
For sure.
But I think mainstream drag um, is very rooted in white culture and, just kind of white drag queens, with, money for costumes. They have money to express themselves and put on these big costumes when really we're not, it's hard to find people that like Black individuals that are, they don't have the ability. Some people might not have the ability, like minority drag queens, to afford t big types of dresses, wigs, all kinds of things. So it can be hard in media sometimes to find that. So like as I was saying in one of the previous questions about how like kids obviously see, drag queens in media and they're like, wow, this is awesome. Like I see this person expressing themselves. That makes me want to change things. There may be some kids of minority groups that don't see themselves represented in drag queens on the media. And
Mm.
I think that that can play, it's a big factor in kids like engagement in the media. So and that goes for like any LGBTQ plus representation in the media that you can see. Like if you take a teenager who is kind of discovering that they're queer and they can't see any representation in the media, then it's going to be really hard for them to understand that that is okay. That part of them should not hide. Um, so I think that this can be hard for younger audiences that are trying to learn to express themselves and they don't see, people that look like them on the screen. Um, so I do think that like all of that race, body type, class, plays a big part in drag. And I think we need to see more diversity of it
Hmm.
um, nowadays. I think that would
Yeah.
be really important. Yeah.
I feel like as of now, I feel like body types might be the biggest one. I mean, I feel like especially when it comes to something like gender expression, I mean, there's a very, like, if you are going to be putting on the whole facade of like a woman, there is a very specific body type that then the man should
Mhm.
be like a slimmer man because he can fit into those dresses and stuff, when really it's like this is a space for everyone of all body types, and then that
Yeah.
that can be kind of scary. And I feel like the media, especially with shows like RuPaul's Drag Race, I feel like they do kind of only show us the slimmer body types, which can be um, what's the word? Not disengaging, but like kind of just push you away from that and thinking, oh,
Yeah.
this isn't for me.
Yeah. It's like that, relates to the media. Like it's hard for people to see different body types represented in the media. And I think that just is hard for everyone, regardless of race or class, like not seeing themselves represented body type wise is really tough because, what we see now is like the perfect woman, like she's all,
Yeah.
kind of all that. I think you can probably understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And like, the ideal man, ideal whatnot. So I do think, yes, you're very right. Like body type probably does play a very, very big role in this.
I wanted to ask you, so we're talking about how mainstream, obviously, it can be a little one track minded, but I want to say, how do you think mainstream exposure has affected the public perception of drag? Like, do you think it's made people more accepting of it because it's, so popular on, common TV and such now?
hmm I think it can be both ways. Like people can take it hard and people can take it in a positive way. But it's definitely opened doors to more drag communities. And it kind of gave global visibility to people, um, queer individuals. Um, but it also kind of created this template as to what drag really is,
Right.
kind of how it's pretty polished, all like the lip syncing to pop songs. It kind of really just gives like an ideal for that. And really it can be, anything in a whole broad schema of things. Like let me just like think of some stuff, but there's like camp drag, horror, political, experimental. There's all kinds of stuff that you can see. Um, like when I went to that show in New York, I think I saw a drag queen with like a full night costume like, knight with a
Oh,
sword and a mask, that kind of action going on.
wow.
There can be any kind of things that your creativity may not even think of. So I do think that this, like, shows like RuPaul's Drag Race really creates a template, but there's so much more going on in the world of drag that many people probably do not see. So.
Yeah. Speaking of that, so that was more mainstream, but I wanted to know, how do you see social media platforms like Instagram, or I mean TikTok's very big right now, so TikTok
Mhm.
shaping drag's visibility and culture today. So how is that kind of giving a new twist on it? Because when drag started,
Mhm.
obviously like social media was not relevant at all.
Yeah. I think that social media, um, more specifically TikTok, is giving it a more positive audience.
I agree.
Because when I see like a drag queen on TikTok, making those like cool transitions and going into drag makeup, which is so cool. I am always looking through the comments to see like kind of what people think of this because me personally, I think it's amazing. But like, there's definitely some people in the mix that do not agree with that. But overall, I am almost always seeing like 90% of the comments being positive and hyping the person up, or it has a ton of likes. Um, so I think that TikTok gives it some sort of positive light. But I think Instagram is more open to generations that aren't just like Gen Z, like
Right.
us. And that's more like TikTok. Um, that's the side of TikTok is Gen Z. But like Instagram, I know my mom's using it, my grandma's using it. There's so many other people in different generations that probably don't understand drag as well as we do, because we're so, accumulated in that now, in our age. So I think that there can definitely be a lot more negativity with of drag in Instagram. So I think it really depends on the social media platform, is what I would say. But I think there's definitely a mix of negative and positive reactions from people.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like TikTok is more of like just a naturally queer space. Like I don't even know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, no, I
I just feel
understand.
like it's just everyone's so themselves on that. And I
Hmm.
feel like, yeah, I think it might just be like the generational gap. Like I just feel like the older people tend to stay on like Facebook versus TikTok's
Hmm.
kind of like all the younger generation that has already been exposed to this and is very like receptive of it.
Yeah, completely.
I did want to steer away from kind of the more general questions and get in more to the focus of my project. So
Mhm.
I did want to say, in your perspective, because obviously you're not a historian and this is just getting a studied person's opinion. So how would you
Yeah.
say drag has historically functioned as a form of resistance or activism?
I think that drag has almost always been political, even if it's not always seen as political, and sometimes it's not like purposefully political, but it very much is. Um, Even existing as an individual who does drag is resistance against people who disagree with gender norms and the binary. Um, Kind of what I was thinking about is during the AIDS crisis specifically, drag queens raised money for community care when governments could not care less and they wouldn't do it themselves. Um, and during protests, drag queens would use their performance to use humor and exaggeration to confront power head on. So I think that they purposefully tied in that outgoing expression to political movements and brought it all together. And that really brings more attention to political movements um, as well. It's, a defiance of, government ideals, just seen in a completely different way. So.
Yeah. I want to say, how do you see drag creating community, especially among queer youth or marginalized groups? So we did just talk about how the queer youth is really big on TikTok, and so that's
Mhm.
probably a good influence to see. But I wanted to get your perspective on, yeah, how do you think it's creating a community?
Yeah, I think that drag communities can be seen everywhere. Um, Kind of off the top of my head, I just previously watched this documentary that I can't, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember the name of it. When I do, I will get back to you. Um, but one of the people that the documentary was focusing on was this drag queen who was going out to different like foster shelters in New York and kind of created this group of kids who were struggling with their identity and was bringing them outfits to put on, wigs, makeup, like all these different forms of expression. And, they weren't forced into any of it. They were just placed on a table, and these kids were like, this is cool. I'm going to pick this up and try it on. And I think that when I saw that, like these kids were all coming together and they were laughing together and they were enjoying themselves. And the time they were there. Um, so I think that's just like a really prime example of like how drag can bring communities together. And I mean, obviously, I don't know where these kids are today. Um, and they may not be into drag now, but that probably helped their self-expression out a lot
Yeah.
because, these kids one of the kids might have picked up a dress and was like, wow, I feel really good in this. And they never would have expected that because they're in a foster care system that doesn't provide them with the right clothes to their self-expression. Um, so yeah.
Great. Um, I agree. I would also say like, because like we talked about earlier, I mean, people are scared about showing the youth things that are more queer centered. I think that's a good point to say like this was not something ever forced on anyone. I mean, just because you're taking in media doesn't mean the media is like forced on you, doesn't mean the media is
Yeah.
converting you. I mean, I see
Yeah,
media of people being vegan all the time, and personally, I'm not going vegan. Like I,
exactly. Like you hold yourself up to your own standards, and there's no one on the internet that's like obviously they might be influential, but they're not telling you have to do this, you know?
I mean, that's the key thing is there's a difference between influence and persuasion.
Yeah.
Like no one's persuading you to do anything. Like this could be an
Hmm.
influence way where it's like, hey, I realize that this is actually how I want to express myself too. Thanks for,
Yeah.
being a role model. But it's not like, oh, I feel forced into this type of thing.
Hmm.
So how would you say fans like you, like me, contribute to sustaining drag culture both online and in person?
I think fans are a really big part of the drag community, even if, they aren't specifically going up and, participating in drag. They still, you know, we we as fans we buy tickets to drag events. We provide content for them as well sometimes, like po even just posting on our Instagram, like a picture of a drag queen is gonna like inform my followers that I think that's cool. And they maybe be like, oh wow, like, maybe I should look more into this. Even just like the smallest thing, like an Instagram story or something. And also we can also be quick to defend them when we are addressed with hatred towards them. I can recall a time where I was sitting at a dinner table, actually at the dining hall, and we were going over the topic of drag queens or something over that sort. And, I shut down a hateful comment that somebody had said. So even just doing that is like those small, tiny things is spreading the word that drag is okay. It's
Right.
not something to be ashamed of in any way. Um, and yeah.
I mean, it's simple things like that. I mean, it's like you would what you do for a fandom of like your favorite show. Like someone says, "Oh, I hate that show." You're gonna be like, "Whoa." You get defensive over things that you're passionate
Yeah.
about. And drags, I mean, it's no different.
Yeah, it kind of just came naturally to me. I mean, I was just like, hey, like maybe think about it this way. Like this is, I'm not, it's like how we were talking about like persuasion versus influence. Like I'm not persuading them to do anything. I'm not telling them, oh, you got to try on drag and like
Hmm.
see this and then you'll see how you feel. And I'm just like telling them, it's okay to think differently sometimes. You don't always have to go under what someone else says. So,
Yeah. So starting to wrap up here, I want to talk about more the future. So I want to ask you, where do you see drag going next? So either artistically, politically, or digitally. And so kind of how do we see also like bringing in the media? Like how do we see the media continuing to evolve, or do we think maybe it's bringing drag back? I mean, that sort of general scheme.
yeah. I think that artistically, politically, digitally is all going to evolve. Drag is continues to evolve to this day. Um, I think that there unfortunately will be political setbacks like there has been for LGBTQ plus communities everywhere now, especially under our president. Um, but I think that because of the power that drag queens hold with their, you know, very outgoing stories, they are not going to ever be silenced or not ever going to let anyone else silence them. So I think that they are just going to continue to grow. And like I said, unfortunately, there will be setbacks, but they will persevere. Um, I mean, obviously, this is my opinion, but like, I really do think that coming from historical context, like we've seen drag queens persevere forever and they continue to. Um, and I think artistically, it is going to change a lot with, different fashion trends coming up. So I think that's kind of like a fun aspect too of it. I think there'll definitely be a lot more different, like, I don't know exactly how to say this, but genres of drag. Like you
Yeah.
might see, you know, drag queens, I don't know, horseback riding, something crazy. Like that's the first thing that popped in my head. But, something like that under that sort, like we don't know what we'll see artistically, but I do think it's going to evolve.
Yeah. I mean, media, social media is the biggest form of like the gateway for this. I mean, it's open
Hmm.
so many people's eyes to like maybe a fandom that they didn't realize that they'd be into drag. I mean, I never thought of drag until I got on TikTok and stuff like that. So I feel like the
Hmm.
media has just like blasted open the doors and it's just going to start getting bigger and bigger and more mainstream, honestly.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay, final question to wrap it up.
Hmm.
What do you think people outside of the queer community most need to understand about drag as an art form?
I think that people need to understand that although a lot of the time it can be about gender, it's also about, creativity, perseverance, storytelling, struggles, survival. Um, and there are some people that definitely, think that it's just like people influencing our children, going off about gender, like it's always negative things, whatnot. Um, and you don't always have to get every reference that they are making, but I think it's just there to appreciate it. And that's what people need to do. I think we need to just appreciate it as, a whole. It doesn't need to be seen as a convincing point at all. Um, it's just, an art form. It's a strong art form that can be used politically, can be used any of those ways, but I don't see it doing any harm. There is no evidence showing that drag queens have done harm to any person,
Right.
anywhere, any age, gender, and ethnicity. It has done nothing of the sort of negative. So I think people just really need to appreciate that and the work that goes into it. Um, and, drag is joy, it's happiness. I mean, it obviously can portray so many emotions, but like you as an audience, you're going to sit and watch a drag show and you are going to be brought with so many emotions. And most of the time, you're going to be laughing and, smiling happy because you're like, wow, like these people are just awesome.
Right.
And the world could just use a lot more of that in a bigger audience and, more diverse group of people watching drag shows.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's an art and it's not just dress up. It's a way of resisting. It's a way of storytelling. And that's what people just really
Mhm.
need to understand is that it's just like any other art where I'm expressing myself and I'm saying something that maybe I can't say with words and I'm doing it
Yeah.
through, performance. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, thank you so much for your time and your
Yeah, of
insight. This
course.
was a lovely interview and it will
Yeah.
be great for my research. And yeah, thank you so
I'm
much. And
glad. Yeah, of course.
thank you
Thank you for
everyone
having
for tuning
me.
in.
I love
Yeah,
talking about it. So
yeah. Thank you. Bye.